Protests have been taking place in Bangkok, where Myanmar's junta chief is attending a regional summit days after an earthquake killed thousands of people in the region. Critics say he should have stayed in Myanmar to help oversee relief efforts. As the recovery operation continues, dozens of monks' bodies were recovered from this monastery in Mandalay. Hundreds more are still missing, and many affected areas are still unreachable by authorities, meaning the death toll is expected to rise. Teams of rescue workers have been deployed to help the injured, but heavily damaged infrastructure has hampered efforts. The 7.7 magnitude tremor was felt elsewhere, including in Thailand, where at least 21 people lost their lives. Let's speak to our news correspondent Nick Beake, who's in Bangkok. So bring us up to date with the very latest from there.
Yeah, Lauren, this is the city where Min Aung Hlaing, the leader of the military junta in Myanmar, has travelled to, and he's taken part in this business summit, a regional business event to boost the economies of Southeast Asian and other Asian countries. And that has drawn some criticism that he's left behind at home in Myanmar this devastating situation. It's interesting, over the past 4 years, he's largely been excommunicated from the global community because that's as a result of the coup he launched back in 2021 and what happened with the civil war that ensued and the great suffering of the Burmese people since that time. But he's back on the international stage, albeit not a huge platform. But when he goes back, he will be confronted with the reality that is a dire situation, with aid agencies warning of a really increasingly fragile and difficult, dangerous situation with the spread of disease, very likely because they can't get enough clean water, medical supplies and other sort of equipment into some of the areas worst hit by the earthquake.
It was interesting, there wasn't striking that Myanmar did appeal for international help, which it doesn't usually do. How difficult has it been for those agencies you've been talking about to get in and operate there?
Yes, you're absolutely right that this was an unusual request for aid, but I think it's easy to say one thing and then do another, because predominantly we've seen China giving the support to Myanmar. There hasn't been a great influx of teams from the Western world. We've heard some problems with visas not being given. So although there have been some specialist units going to maybe the biggest cities, mainly Mandalay and the capital Naypyidaw, there hasn't been this huge international effort that we've seen with previous natural disasters where resources are mobilised really quickly. And yes, that makes a big effort. It's too late now, but particularly in the first 72 hours, that sort of golden period when lives are going to be saved, having that expert experience is really, really crucial. Of course, we did see some remarkable rescues maybe 5-6 days after the earthquake, but unfortunately in the last couple of days that has not been the case.
And it's now a week on since that earthquake struck, and obviously Bangkok had that very dramatic image of the fallen skyscraper that was under construction. How are people feeling now that a week on, given that there was in some ways fairly small amount of damage, but also that earthquake reached them, or the effects of the earthquake reached all the way to Thailand?
Yes, I think certainly it shocked and stunned people. We think about 100 people on that site, that construction site, died when the tower that was being built collapsed, and there's been a huge operation. I mean, it's right in the heart of the capital city here in Thailand, right in the heart of Bangkok, so it's a very visual reminder for people all around, and the shaking was so great that everyone has a story about where they were and what they felt. Of course, devastating here, particularly for the families of those who died, more than 100 people, it's thought. But in Myanmar, the suffering continues in that we see in footage a lot of people not going back into their homes because they're cracked and they are worried about whether they'll be safe. And so a lot of people have been sleeping outside for the past week now. So that's really compounding the misery of a country which before this earthquake was already really struggling. The United Nations estimating that about 20 million people in Myanmar needed some form of aid. And so that was before the quake. Now the whole situation has been exacerbated. And in about a month's time, Lauren, comes the monsoon season, which I mean would be devastating and really difficult for a lot of people out in the open, and combined with the threat of cholera, other waterborne diseases, it's a really desperate situation.
Nick Beake, thank you very much indeed.